Hi, my name is Davis Tebben, and this is The Kweeks of Kookatumdee by Bill Peet, who is an outstanding children's book author who also worked for Disney um, from the middle to the end of last century. And his books are, I think, so much better than what gets made now. Um, they have brilliant, vivacious, original art, imaginative storytelling with vibrant, unique words that are just fun to read. And many of them are told in verse, which makes them even more fun to read. So without further ado, The Kweeks of Kookatumdee by Bill Peet. Far off somewhere in the Tumbuzzaroo Sea, on the jungle island of Kookatumdee, there lived a flock of strange bird-like things called Kweeks, with huge beaks and undersized wings. With no wild beasts living there to endanger the Kweeks, their only problem was eating, just filling their beaks. Sounds like Animal Planet. The Kweeks couldn't fly, so they couldn't go anywhere. Their only food was the tropical fruit growing there. The purple pumpkin-sized fruit called a plopalop that grew in one towering ploppa treetop. And since the Kweeks were entirely too clumsy to climb, getting something to eat was a matter of time. They often spent hours just waiting around for the fruit to ripen and fall to the ground. When the plopalops ripened and did finally fall, it was every bird for himself in a wild free-for-all. Queek against queek, with not a one playing fair, and everyone out to get more than his share. The rougher and tougher and quicker the queek, the more plopalops he could snatch in his beak. At night time, the queeks were all huddled together in a cavern for shelter from the foggy, damp weather. As they slept, the queeks dreamed the same dream every night. They had sprouted huge wings and were on a long flight to a beautiful island with plenty of space, and ploppa trees growing all over the place. As they awoke from the dream, they were irked as could be when they remembered they had only one ploppa tree. A queek named Quentin was so worried one morning he made a short speech, which was more of a warning. "I'm sorry if I sound awfully preachy," he said, "but if we go on being greedy, there's trouble ahead. When it comes to eating, we must try to be fair and be sure that no one gets more than his share." "Terrific! Just dandy!" the queeks all agreed. "From now on we'll be fair. Yes, yes, indeed." They tried to think of a plan that was just about right so that each queek got a plopalop without having to fight. But some days the plopalops that dropped from the tree might be 100, or just 2 or 3. It was impossible to divide up an uncertain amount, especially since the queeks never learned how to count. How many for each remained a big question, and not even Quentin had a suggestion. The next morning the queeks were brawling once more in a battle of beaks, the same as before. And as Quentin predicted, there was trouble ahead, and the big troublemaker was a queek known as Jed. Every day he outfought and outate everyone, and in just a few months he weighed almost a ton. Jed was selfish and greedy, and not only that, the big oversized brute was as quick as a cat. When a plopalop dropped, he was ready to pounce and snap it up in his beak on the very first bounce. And unless a plopalop came bouncing their way, all the rest of the queeks went hungry all day. The bellies had shrunk with so little to eat, the queeks weren't much more than big beaks and big feet. "We're done for," said Quentin one afternoon, "unless we do something drastic real soon. We can sneak up on Jed before he suspects and clobber the brute with a few thousand pecks." "A dandy idea!" exclaimed the queeks all at once. "We'll teach Jed not to bully us poor little runts." At twilight, when fog drifted in from the sea and Jed was napping under the tall ploppa tree, the whole flock of queeks, crouching low to the ground, crept up to big Jed without making a sound. "Now remember," warned Quentin, "there's no turning back. Let's demolish the brute with an all-out attack." Quentin led the attack, catching Jed by surprise with a ferocious peck between his squinty, mean eyes. But one peck was all, alas and alack. His friends were too scared to join in the attack. All at once Quentin found himself beak to beak with a fighting-mad, furious, gigantic queek. "You little creep," squawked Jed. "You little upstart. Just for that silly trick, I'm going to peck you apart." Then before he could snatch the small queek in his beak, Quentin was gone. He took off like a streak. The chase was now on, with Jed in red-hot pursuit, and Quentin zigzagging to escape the big brute. But the island was such a very small place, there wasn't much room for a very long chase. Jed was out to get even, no matter what, and he finally chased Quentin to a very tight spot at the edge of a cliff, with nowhere to go, unless he jumped into the rough sea down below. But if he jumped in the sea, he'd be a goner for sure, and a fierce peck on the head was too much to endure. There was just one thing left for poor Quentin to do. In desperation, the little Queek finally flew. Frantically flapping his wings, he sailed over the head of the flabbergasted, dumbfounded, befuddled Jed. Then out over the island, Quentin went gliding to surprise his Queek friends, who were all still in hiding. "Come on out," Quentin shouted. "Look up here in the sky. Look at me. I can fly. It's as easy as pie. Now come on, everyone. Flap your wings and just try it. We're all light as a feather from our starvation diet." And with squeals of delight, the Queeks took off together, as easy as pie and as light as a feather. Then after saying goodbye to Kookatumdee, the Queeks flew on across the Tumbuzaroo Sea. And they happened onto an island, as it turned out, which resembled the place they had all dreamed about, with dozens of tall ploppa trees growing there, and plopalops for all, with plenty to spare. They didn't dare overeat, for fear they'd get fat. The happy Queeks enjoyed flying too much for that.